Greetings to all. Welcome to this McCarter at Home event. McCarter at Home is McCarter Theater Center's virtual programming from Princeton, New Jersey in the US. Its goal is to bridge the isolation gap and be a source of light and art and culture and human connection during these times. My name is Paula Alexson, and I am happily McCarter's Artistic Engagement Manager, especially on a night like tonight. And it's my great pleasure to moderate the McCarter Live in Conversation series. It's a special thrill to have as our final special guest for the series, composer for the theater and of popular song, Grammy Award-winning producer, and Tony and Academy Award-nominated songwriter Lucy Simon, in conversation with McCarter's artistic director and resident playwright Emily Mann. We sort of have been building up to this conversation, ladies. Lucy, you may not know this, but since we started this Friday series, we've been dangling carrots about your and Emily's collaboration, with my strict instructions to Emily not to give too much away so people would join us to learn more about it from the two of you. So it's wonderful to have you both with us tonight to talk about your relatively newfound friendship and your working relationship. Thank you both for making this happen.
Pleasure. So happy to be here. Being at the McCarter environment was one of the great experiences of my life. So I'm so glad to be invited back to talk about it.
We're glad to have you. Thank you. So just so that you know, we have local, regional, and a national audience today, as well as a few folks zooming in from Canada and Austria and the UK. The chat is open for folks that are in the Zoom room's use, and I'll try to incorporate questions and comments as we go. Also, we're streaming live on Facebook, so greetings to our Facebook viewers. Thank you everyone for joining us, and special thanks to those who have already submitted questions, so appreciate that. Now, Lucy, we've been opening these McCarter Live in Conversation series events with Emily and our special guests with sort of like a current moment check-in. So if I may ask you, where are you zooming in from tonight? How are you doing, and what's been your day-to-day experience personally or artistically in the midst of these last few months?
Well, happily, we moved to Nyack a few years ago from Manhattan. So we're not in New York City, which is a blessing. And we live in a house here that has a view of the river, and it's spacious, and I'm very happy. And in the quarantine, it's really not much different from any other way we live. My husband has Parkinson's, so we stay home a lot, and we read and we watch television and we listen to music. And one of the great joys of this quarantine has been working with Emily and on this project called Our Souls at Night, most wonderful novel by Ken Haruf, and we will talk about that.
We will. Oh, that's wonderful. Lucy, may I ask, when I go over the bridge, if I wave, will I be waving at your house, your back window?
If you go over the Tappan Zee or the Mary Como, whatever you call it.
Yeah, I call it the Tappan Zee.
Yeah, it's the Tappan Zee.
Okay.
Look at it right from my window. It's wonderful. It's so beautiful. And watching it going up and watching the colors change at night.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so personal to me now. I'll remember that when I go over. And nothing against renaming the bridge. I just have enjoyed calling it the Tappan Zee.
It just is that way, you know, but I do happen to love the Cuomo name because I love the Cuomos, all of them.
Emily, how has your week been? And not intending to both state the obvious and make myself cry early this evening, but this is your final week as artistic director and resident playwright after 30 years of service. I'm just wondering how your week's been.
Well, I think if I didn't have Lucy Simon in my life, it would be a lot less joyful than it is, but it is quite joyful.
Really, that's true. Wonderful.
Yeah. I just wrote a letter to the community thanking them for the 30 years of support and how much I have fallen in love with this audience and this community and this theater and this staff. It's been, you know, I always said I had the finest and best gig in the American theater, and I was not exaggerating. I cannot imagine a more wonderful artistic directorship for 30 years here. So, you know, it's bittersweet. I think it's time. I'm excited to go back to being a freelance artist, playwright and director and screenwriter. And it's so interesting when Lucy mentions her house overlooking the Hudson in Nyack. She's just above the house I lived in before I moved here. I was a freelance writer, director, and screenwriter. And I know exactly the view she looks at. And if you wake up early, you see the sunrise over the Hudson. And I was just above Toni Morrison. So it has a very nice alignment. And Toni was here when I first arrived to Princeton and became a dear friend. So yeah, there's a synchronicity to all of this that feels right.
Ladies, I have to tell you that you're getting love in the chat right now. We have a lot of friends in the audience today. So just to note that Jarrell Henderson, the director from Chicago, and also Cheryl Mintz, McCarter's longtime resident stage manager, is sending love to you. XOXO and hearts all across the board. So it's great to have them with us.
I did 35 shows with Cheryl, so.
Great to have her on board.
That might be a record in the American theater. Yeah.
So Emily and Lucy, I've sort of curated a conversational journey for you tonight that intends first to introduce Lucy to the McCarter audience, though I'm sure that with many of the attendees tonight, they're already familiar with your career, Lucy, and your artistic work as both singer, songwriter, performer, and musical theater composer. But for the youngsters that might need a little brush up, I'd love to go over some of that material, your backstory. I'd also love then to talk about how the two of you met and what clicked with you in your collaboration or desire to become collaborators. And then I'm eager to land on the project, Our Souls at Night, and to ask you about the process of how do you collaborate on a musical work. And then we'll touch also on how did your collaboration change in the midst of COVID-19, the shutdown of the theaters, and sort of our need to distance from one another and what that was like for you. And then I think that will take us right up to the end. So all that being said, you should feel free to follow up on one another's thoughts, and I will keep an eye out on the chat. And I'll catch up to you wherever you go. Okay. So Lucy, I'm a sucker for origin stories of artists.
My sister just came on.
Hi. Hi. This is unexpected.
Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
There they go. It's great to have them with us.
There, ladies. That is my sister, Carol Mann, and Ginny Mason, soon to be part of our family when my nephew marries her daughter. So
well, we're so happy to have you both with us. Thank you for surprising us. So Lucy, I'm a sucker for origin stories of artists, you know, first memorable exposure to the art form, eureka moments that sort of clarified a talent or a passion. And I'm wondering if you might share with us what your earliest music memory from your childhood is. And
there was always music in her. My father was a wonderful pianist. He was, by profession, he was a book publisher, but he always played the piano. I mean, it was just always there. My mother was a beautiful singer. And when my two sisters who surround me, Carly, the younger, Joanna, the older, we all sing, and quite wonderfully, I used to be a soprano. Now I have no voice at all, which is awful. Carly is the low, deep voice and alto, and Joey is the middle voice. So we would all sing together. And Joanna, she likes to be called Joanna, but we call her Joey, she would bring home her 3-part Glee Club songs, and we would learn them and sing them. And then we were very young, and we just did that. And interestingly enough, dyslexia runs rampant in our family. My mother was very dyslexic, couldn't spell, and I inherited that from her. And both Carly and I can't write notes that we write, that we sing in our heads, but we have trouble writing them down. So it's interesting, and I think one of the things that allowed Carly and me to become composers is that it was our way of communicating. And melody for me has always been so important. I mean, I hear it, I experience the emotion of it, and when I'm writing songs, it's the melody that's important. I've recently started to try to write lyrics. I'm not a good lyricist, but on this process, I started writing lyrics, and I found it a fascinating process for my left brain to say, okay, kick into it. But I've recently, one of the new collaborators that's joined us is Susan Birkenhead, who's one of the great lyricists in the theater and an old friend and collaborator. So this is one of the things that's exciting and has shifted the process a bit. But the first song I wrote was, I think I was in 6th or 7th grade, and we had to recite a poem to our class. And because I had difficulty remembering words, I didn't have difficulty if I set them to music. So I chose the poem Winkin', Blinkin' and Nod. And I wrote a song that actually, winking and blinking and nod one way, one night sailed off on a wooden shoe. And Carly and I recorded it years later, and it became a big hit. So that was my first song, and it was because I couldn't recite the words without music. So that's sort of.
I have to jump on that immediately, because I had the great opportunity to meet you last year at McCarter's annual artistic retreat. And I had the opportunity to sit and have dinner with you. And I remember as we were eating, as the members of the staff got keyed into who you were, people started to come over from diverse generations, and they would say, thank you. And one person said, your folk music scored my coming of age. And another said, oh, the Simon Sisters sing, the Lobster Quadrille, and Winkin' and Blinkin' and Nod was a huge part of my childhood. And I wonder, do you get that wherever you go?
Not so much anymore. I'm still getting, oh, is Carly Simon your sister? Oh. But no, you know.
Right. Oh, so I love that you just sang from that. How wonderful. And to think that it was your first song.
It was the first song I ever wrote.
It's amazing. Emily, I wonder what your recollections that you might have about Lucy as you were growing up and seeing Lucy in the culture as I was as well. What do you remember about that?
Well, Winkin', Blinkin' and Nod for sure. And then, you know, I was very aware of the Simon Sisters. So, I mean, there was all of that going on, and they're just a little bit older, and I sort of wanted very much to be them. And so that's what I remember the most. But then, as I became a theater person, I mean, Secret Garden is one of the most exquisite musicals ever. I mean, that score is just breathtaking. So more of that, you know.
I must say that when I first met Emily, and that was about 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's
recent. And I just felt, speaking of sisters, I thought, you are my sister.
It was one of those electrifying moments.
I just felt we had met long lost sisters, and so we had to come together in some way, and we did in the most magnificent.
I had wanted to meet Lucy forever, and then was it Kathy Weller or was it
It was Kathy
Marsha.
and Marsha Norman.
Right.
Yeah.
We were at an award. Were you getting an award
I
then?
was getting an award, right?
Yeah. And
Sounds
it was, I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, we were all there and Marsha was there. What, do you remember what the award ceremony was?
It was a contribution to musical theater. Probably. It was,
And so I was there as a cheerleader, and and I ran into the Wellers, and Kathy Weller said to me, "Oh my God, you have to meet Lucy Simon." I said, "Well, I've wanted to meet Lucy Simon for, you know, decades." She says, "I'll make it happen." And then I ran into Marsha Norman, and she said the same thing. I thought, Lucy, and then she said, "Lucy Simon wants to meet you." And I said, Lucy Simon wants to meet me? I mean, how would she know about me? And then we met, and it was one of those moments where you look into someone's eyes and sparks, I mean, just recognition on such a deep level. And Lucy immediately said, "I want to work together. We just have to do something together." I went, "Oh, okay, and let's." And we exchanged phone numbers, and I thought, oh, she's just happy because she's getting an award, so she's being incredible. But she called me immediately, I mean, within days, and we started to talk on the phone, and it was just fantastic. But we
do you think being sisters and having sisters, or is it just souls speaking to one another? Or
yeah, you know, some women really adore other women, and I mean as if in terms of a friendship, but not necessarily on, you know, how they identify in terms of their sexuality, but just, and maybe because I have a sister that I'm very close to, and Lucy does too. But I love working with women. I love, you know, our staff is a lot of women. I like how women work together, and I have very, very close women friends. And but this was an unusual meeting.
It really was. And it also came at a time, Emily, your mother was dying and had died, and I immediately connected with that loss, and
That's right.
we connect. I mean, our souls connected. Our souls.
Our souls
really
during the day, not our souls at night. Yeah, it was. Lucy, we just understood each other, and Lucy's heart just opened to me at a very painful time in my life.
You know, and looking at you now, I think it's also cheekbones.
We have the same cheekbones, yes. Cheekbones. We did recognize each other that way.
Like looking in the mirror. Actually, though, the first Simon sister that Emily met was your sister Joanna. You said you were going to tell me the story of that, Emily. Can you share it with our audience?
Silly, funny story. It's another reason I was so aware of Lucy for so long. I was in Europe with no money with my friend Stephen Wadsworth and Peter Cazares, both insane opera people. And they still are. Peter's a tenor. Stephen has done many productions at McCarter, as you know, and at the Met and all that. And he's an opera director. Anyway, we were in Salzburg to see operas, and we were living out of a camper, and we had no money, and we wanted to go see this incredibly famous opera that Joanna was in. Oh my God, it's out of my mind right now, but Reinhardt had originally directed. The title of it is escaping me. Anyway, there were no tickets to be had. There were some scalpers, but we had no money. I mean, we could have scalped a couple. So Stephen had the idea that we would dress up as makeup people and watch it from the wings. And so we went to this old place on one of the streets and bought these little smocks. We I had some makeup with me, and we smeared the makeup all over, and we snuck in the stage door and said, "Oh, we're makeup people," and they could speak German. I couldn't really speak a word, and we went to the wings, and Joanna looked at us and said, "What are you guys doing here?" And we said, "Please don't tell us." And then Stephen and Peter talked about how much they worshiped her, and they had to see this. We had to see this. We met, and she was so great. She just said, "I will keep your secret. I'll say you're my staff." And then she made this gorgeous entrance, and there we were with our little makeup brushes watching her from, we were all about 18 or 19 years old.
She is an amazing woman. I'm so happy to be connected to her.
She was great.
Lucy, I had imagined before I had the opportunity to start prepping for tonight's event that that my segue into your segue into composing for the American Musical Theater was going to revolve around The Secret Garden,
Right.
as Emily already mentioned, until I realized that you were one of the contributors to a little show called My Name is Alice, a musical review, which I was in college.
It's Joan Micklin Silver, right? Yeah, I saw that too.
Yes, but with among others, one Susan Birkenhead, who we will come to shortly, the aforementioned Susan Birkenhead. So I just wanted to give you love and say the next time I see you, you're signing my play copy.
Oh, yes.
Susan and I wrote a song for that called Watching All the Pretty Young Men. And it's about a group of housewives who go to a male strip club. And it's really funny. And it was one of the first times that Susan and I worked together. So
Shall we sing it?
Right. What?
Hey, 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 you're driving me crazy when you move so lazy, you move so hot.
All right, Paula.
We're having fun. It's our last time.
It is.
Oh, I love
all right.
that. You should perform in that. And the other song that I wrote for that, I wrote a song with Steve Tessich called I Sure Like the Boys Who Like to Dance Real Slow, which is nice and sexy.
It was wonderful. My friend Amy Alvarez portrayed that very song, sang that very song. So she might be out there.
Can you sing that?
I will not to that. I'm a lesbian, so we'll just leave it at that. Revealing.
Would like to dance real slow.
Oh.
My voice cracks there, but it was a wonderful song and wonderful experience. Wonderful to work with the late, wonderful Steve Tessich.
So what were the factors involved in your turning to the musical theater form?
Well, I had just had children, and I had been, a singer-songwriter and feeling really stupid going on stage with my guitar and my band. And I said, I don't want to do that. But the songs that I really liked writing told stories. So I thought, I want to write for the theater. And at that point, somebody was producing The Little Prince. I said, I want to do that. So I called an agent, and he said, well, you can't just start and write something like that. You have to come in with your own project. So I thought, well, I really loved the Little House on the Prairie, which I was watching with my kids. So I got the rights to that and started working on that actually with Susan Birkenhead.
Ah.
And, and it didn't happen because we didn't get a book that worked, but Susan and I established a way of writing together that still works. But I much preferred writing for a story rather than writing for myself.
There's a lovely woman in our Zoom room named Joy Rogers, who seems to be a friend of yours, Lucy, and said, did you know that my dear friend Lucy is also a great nurse?
Hey, Joy, I've kept that a secret.
I had it in my notes. I was going to ask you it, but I jumped over it. So thanks, Joy.
Yes, I was. I graduated from the Cornell School of Nursing. Joy was a dear friend and a classmate. And she recently, I don't have it in front of me, she recently made a mask out of our old nursing school uniform. And she sent it to all of our classmates. It's so wonderful. I wore it to Costco yesterday. It works. It kept me protected. Thank you, Joy. Lots of love.
Wow.
So The Secret Garden was your Broadway debut as a composer.
Yes, it was.
You were nominated for a Tony Award for Best Original Score, among other accolades. What were the joys and challenges of your first musical theater composing project in such immediate success in the form.
I thought that's the way it should always be. And then it turned out when I did Dr. Zhivago that it wasn't. But The Secret Garden was a joy from beginning to end. And I must say that I knew exactly what to do with The Secret Garden.
Oh.
With Dr. Zhivago, I just loved the story. And it was a challenge that it took a long time to finally get hold of. And it didn't work in New York, but I'm happy to say that it's doing beautifully in Germany and Europe. They understand it. It was a disaster in New York, but the music is beautiful, and I'm very proud of the score that we wrote for that.
And actually, was it not in performance until the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been in performance in Europe constantly.
Yeah.
But you were about to go before the play
That's right.
hit. Yeah, to London, right? And they had to, didn't they have to postpone or?
Oh yeah, actually that was for a Secret Garden concert, but
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But London did a Dr. Zhivago concert that was so thrilling, and one of my favorite stars, Raman Karmalu, sang the role of Dr. Zhivago, and it was extraordinary. I was so happy to hear it.
Christopher Sidoli, who I believe is coming to us from the UK, wrote in the chat, some of the songs from Little House are my favorites.
I met Chris when he was in a production of The Secret Garden when he was in high school. And I went to his high school and saw it because one of his classmates was the son of a dear friend of mine. So Chris and I met after that. He just became such a dear friend, and I sort of think of him as my godson. And Chris, when I get old and gray and full of sleep, I expect you to take care of me.
There's your talent.
Chris.
So you exchanged contact information, and she contacted you immediately. Lucy, did you contact Emily with an idea, or how did this
we just said we have to do something together. So we talked through some ideas. I tend to be rather sentimental, and I came up with the idea of doing The Secret Scripture, which is based on a novel by Sebastian Barry, which is incredible. And Emily read it and loved it, and she suggested we do one on Mata Hari. And I said, yeah. And then we sort of didn't want to do either of those for various reasons. Yeah. So I just started thinking about this wonderful novel of Ken Haruf, Our Souls at Night. Haruf, I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing the name. And it's about a widow and a widower who first form a friendship and then fall in love. And it is such a gorgeous story because it's really, although they've both been married to other people, this is the first time they've really experienced true passion and the communing of souls and the communing of tremendous love. And we just found that very exciting. And that's what we decided to do. I mean, of course, there are challenges along the way. We won't go into. We've been talking with our collaborators about the challenges, and they're mighty. But
we might go into some of them.
They're interesting, yeah. But we both fell in love with this gorgeous book, and to think of that one confined out of a sense of isolation. It all takes place in a fictional small town in Colorado called Holt. All of Ken Haruf's novels take place there. And it's a fascinating look at place, but also the isolation of these two, one is widowed, one's a widower. They're isolated, and she has the courage to go against what she knows will be frowned upon in this town, to go and ask this man to come and talk to her at night. and keep her warm. And then not for sex, but for warmth and companionship. And that's how it begins. And then it goes from there. And it is, I don't know too many times we see older people, they're in their 70s, not only have a second chance, but in fact, they fall in love truly for the first time, not the second time. They had marriages, and he had a love affair, but this is, neither really knew what love was before they found each other. And there's a lot of obstacles along the way that won't let them keep this love. So it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And in a way so needed right now. So many of us know what it is to be isolated. Unfortunately, many of our dear friends are alone. And because of the pandemic, have isolation even from family, far-flung family and friends. So that need for connection, communion, and soul communion is, I think, something people understand and long for in these fractured times.
It's a real honor to be able to share this with you from the chat. Sorrel Haruf put into the chat, Ken Haruf's family is all listening in. Dad would have gotten such a kick out of you incredible women. Well, story on stage based on this last novel of his. Thank you.
That's so, I
thank you, Sorrel.
Kathy Haruf, because the whole rights thing was confusing. We thought Netflix owned the rights to this property, and we thought, we'll never get the rights. And then it turned out that the rights are owned still by the Haruf family, and so I called Kathy Haruf, his widow, who has become a very dear friend of mine. And so I said, she's sort of now one of the sisterhood. And she, she's informed me so much about the family and what was important to them. Kent was dying when he wrote this book. It was the last book that he wrote. And it was really his first love story. And he wrote it as a love story for Kathy. Oh. And she shared that with me. And it just so beautiful. And to bring myself into it, I was, last summer when we were working on this musical, the first day I got the diagnosis of breast cancer, invasive breast cancer. So I immediately went into the mode of, oh my God, I've got to just make the most of this day and this opportunity. And Emily was with me all the way. I happily have conquered the cancer, but not the passion for living in the moment and making the most of what we have. And I'm so happy. Kathy, thank you so much for trusting us with this property, because we love it and it means so much to us. And thank you all the family who's watching this that I don't know. I know a few members in London, but
we're so glad to have them with us.
We are happy to have you with us, right?
Thank
you. So the initial project began with the two of you, well, three of you, with gratitude to Kent and his family for sure. But with the two of you in this first stage of collaboration, where do you each start in your individual roles and areas of expertise? How does one write a musical?
Well, it's so interesting that one of the reasons I was so surprised that Lucy said we've got to do one together, do a project together, is because I'd only written or actually co-written one other musical in my life. And that was Betsy Brown with Entozaki Shange and by Kita Carroll. And that
the first McCarter show.
Yeah, well, it wasn't the first show. It was in the first season. Yeah,
okay.
The first season was in the spring. Keisha, of course, thought it was the first. That's why you're thinking that she thought it was the first show, because to her it's the first and last. I mean, to her it's everything. Right? And it was to me too. But so I was surprised. So when you say, how do you write a musical? the two of us just leapt in like wild women. I mean, we said, we've got this week together. Let's see what we can do. And we all both, Lucy had a sort of map in her mind of how the first arc should go. So she gave me sort of a list of scenes, and I went to the book, and she went to the piano and into her amazing mind of melodies and ideas. And we talked about it, and we talked about what it meant to us. And then we went off to our separate places, and I came back with scenes, she came back with songs, and we went into the rehearsal room and heard each other's work and mapped out what we wanted to do next. And we just flew like the wind together. It just came out in a rush. Remember that feeling, Lucy?
It was incredible. Of course, the book is just laid out so beautifully. You just
so beautifully.
He told us what to write, how to write.
He told us what to write.
And what we felt is that what was missing from the film with Robert Redford and Jane Fonda was another dimension. And we felt putting music to it would give it that dimension. And I think it has. So it just, you're able to get into the inner workings of the people's feelings and thoughts, and you're able to get, duets and trios and have a lot happening that makes it lively and puts it into the realm of musical theater.
Because what's so brilliant about the book is that it has almost a flat aspect to how people talk and respond, but the words are the tip of the iceberg of all the emotion and complexity of these people. And because, as you know, I adore Chekhov and I love Pinter, and I love the spareness of language that in some ways covers the huge well of emotion underneath. And what you can do with the musical is reveal that emotion. So a lot of what happened in the movie is it was very, in many ways, very faithful to the book, but it stayed on the word. The subtext wasn't revealed. And so we're just finding that to be a glorious way because when you read it, you sense it from the novel.
You feel
it. But when you're dealing with stage or film, you've got to reveal it in another way. So that's been thrilling to work on.
Lucy, I read this fabulous interview with you in the Times, and you noted that you can translate emotion into music. And that's sort of what you're saying, Emily, just reminds me of that. But I guess my question is, what is some of the content in Our Souls at Night, and how do you manifest that musically?
You want to take that, Lucy?
Yeah, is that a question that makes sense?
It's magic. She comes back with it.
Try to sing. Our souls at night, they come together and form a chain of lights that jump up from the sea. Our souls at night, in ways mysterious, sing the songs of who we are and what we are and what we're meant to be. And that, it's just the sense of what our souls do. And that song is very different from most of this. Most of the score is sort of a country folk score, but this song, we wanted to get the essence of the title, Our Souls at Night.
And it lifts it to that soul level, yeah.
Right.
So will you keep that name for the piece, likely?
I want to.
I want to.
Too soon?
I actually asked Kathy how they came to that title, and they said, well, Kathy, I hope I'm not giving something away that's too private, but Kathy,
they can tell me in chat.
What?
She can tell me in chat.
They said what was so important to them was the nighttime of coming together and sharing their stories and holding each other's hands and being so connected that almost they didn't have to speak because their souls were together.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I hope I'm getting that right, Kathy.
So, when in the process did you begin bringing other members of your creative team, and who are they? And how do you incorporate them into or open up the process that you've created with one another to welcome new collaborators in?
Well, I'm going to start with that because, as I've said, and as you actually heard, my voice is damaged. So I couldn't sing the songs and record them so that other people would know them. So I immediately felt that I needed musical help. So I went to a friend of mine, wonderful music director, Ted Sperling, who I'd worked with long ago in The Secret Garden, and somebody that he works with, who is a most wonderful singer in the world, Victoria Clark. And I wanted to work with them. So they got very interested in the project, and we've been working with them, and they are very interested not only in just doing the music, but in conceptualizing the show. So that's sort of how we've been working with them. And it became quite clear to me, and probably to everybody else who didn't say it right away, that I write decent lyrics, but I need to have a lyricist who really is as expert at that as I am in writing melody. I totally trust myself to write melody. That's, as I said, it's my emotional language, but I don't trust myself to write lyrics. Susan Birkenhead was asked, and
yeah, one of the all-time greats. Yeah, and also you asked Carly. I mean, you just sang Carly's.
I did sing, yeah, because I didn't know, I had the tune for Our Souls at Night, and I knew we wanted to have a song called Our Souls at Night. So I asked, because I was in the middle of chemo brain fog, and I didn't have any idea how to go about writing a lyric for that tune, which is really very lovely. So I asked Carly to do that, and she did.
I just love it. Yeah.
It's
Sisters.
I have a feeling that Susan is going to want to change it, but right now it's Our Souls at Night. Yeah. They come together and form a chain of lights that jump up from the sea.
Yeah. So I have a feeling it's going to end up in a different place.
Okay. It might very well. I mean, we're really at the stage where we're tossing up the songs that we were sure we're going to go here, and they'll find another place.
Right, and we're giving it open. You know, you said, how do you welcome in, you know, the new collaborators? Well, the most important person to welcome in is the third writer, who's Susan Birkenhead, and is, you know, the grande dame of living lyricists in our estimation in the American theater. So we're listening to what she has to say and what she has to give. And because she also has done so much new musical theater work that has been just smashing, her way of going in is not to leap in the way Lucy and I did. Her needs to see the global picture and ask the music theater structural questions that we just loved the story, rushed in and started responding. She's taking a more measured approach, which is fascinating right now, as are Ted and Vicky, and looking at, well, how are we going to deal with style, musical theater structure, form, and we may explode, which I find that the next step is going to be fascinating as a writer. How do we explode some of this and look at things fresh and with a new eye? So there's a first draft of a book, which is very much a first draft, really gets the story down, and it does it in a linear fashion. And we have maybe half the melodies, do you think, Lucy, so far? Yeah, which is a lot. Right. So it's a lot for them to be responding to and working with. But now the next step is how we make it into something that's fresh and new and breaks new ground for musical theater. And we're in those conversations now, which are very stimulating and very difficult, but very stimulating.
That's exciting.
Yeah. There aren't easy answers. The two of us were just sort of flowed together. And now we're going to go, oh, we have to answer to a lot of things, which we didn't do before. But I'm finding it hard and wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. They're brilliant people.
It takes a lot of courage to do what we're doing now.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. I mean, to just say, okay, we're going to just open this up and see where it goes, you know?
Yeah, because some of the stuff we're madly in love with, but we're saying we're open to everything.
Posture.
I'm very proud of us.
Good for you. So where were you in the development process when the COVID-19 shutdown came? And how did working in the midst of the pandemic alter your working process? How were you working before it, and how did it affect that? Or were you using Zoom? Were you?
We're not.
Yes, old-fashioned telephone. But
phone and email, yeah.
And
FaceTime, yeah.
And then we had that wonderful time at the artist retreat, which really
when we had 10 days together in the same place, morning, noon, and night, and just worked together, we got an enormous amount done. But we knew we wouldn't be doing that again until this time the next year, which would be right now or 2 weeks.
We thought we'd be finishing now.
Yeah, we thought we would get a full the songs would be fully composed, and we would be at the end of a first draft, including at least the songs.
And we were hoping to be able to have a first reading, so that really slowed that down.
And we had two things. We had chemo brain, which slowed us down a bit, and we had COVID, but more was bringing on the other collaborators, which made us, they encouraged me to finish writing the book to the end, which I did.
Oh, wow.
And that was a huge push, but it was useful because I could finish the vision that Lucy and I had together. And now they're responding to that. And they very much said, just be a playwright, just write it, and be free. And don't worry about where the songs come or anything else. Just we'll cannibalize your scenes to make songs, just write it. So that was very freeing and very exciting. And now we're going back to ask the deeper questions of, all this is very good, but how do we make it mind-blowing kind of?
Well, the other real problem of COVID is getting the music down, because I was hoping to go into a studio and record all of these songs. Can't do it. Right. So
and also we want to have a reading, and we won't be able to get everyone in the same room. We'll have to do a Zoom reading, which has its limitations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, the miraculous Victoria Clark has recorded a couple of these songs, and it's so gorgeous. I mean, she has the most incredible voice, and the ability to just, speaking of an emotional singer, she just gets it all. That's a great joy, and I can't wait to get it down on tape so we can all take the pleasure of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the present state of where the work is, do you have your own favorite moment?
Not yet. I think that there's one part of it that we all totally adore, and that's that Addie, there was the widow. When Addie and Louis are living together and in love, Addie's grandson comes to live with them unexpectedly because her son, who is really messed up, has separated from his wife. And so he drops this 8-year-old kid, Jamie, off at their house. And then Louis and Addie have to figure out how to comfort this child, how to make him feel like he belongs there. And that step has been exquisite for us. I don't know that we've landed there, but we certainly have made inroads in it. And I think that's really exciting. And then that turns out to be the challenge to their love affair, because Addie's son, Gene, the messed up one who's miserable and just sort of refuses to let them live together and manages to separate them. And that's the big challenge, the dramatic challenge. And we have veered in the one area that we veered from Haruf's novel, which ends sadly, powerfully, but sadly. We have allowed all of the family to resolve the differences and come together at the end. And it just makes us all so happy. I mean, it may not be realistic, but it just is, it's what should happen. It should be the end of this isolation, the end of the COVID. We all come out and we are together and we sing
Make a New Family.
Prairie Rose, you know. It's just a gorgeous moment.
Yeah. I also love the moment, Lucy, where, and again, this is maybe because I was free from the novel, but had found their voices. And I wrote the breakthrough scene when Louis, the widower, confronts Gene and makes him confront why he has been unable to move forward in his life. And that is a very dramatic scene, and it was really exciting to write. And we think it will be, if not a trio, then a quartet.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I started writing for it was Gene's, "Don't put your son on the line of fire. He's just a kid and he has no power to defend himself." And that was a very sort of rock, hard song. And then what we're going to do is have Gene sing about his torment, because he thought, I mean, a great misunderstanding and a tragedy happened, and he thought he was to blame. And then Addie says, "Nobody blames you. You have to forgive yourself." So there's this sort of convergence of these three people singing their different points of view, and you know, my big challenge is to put it together musically, which I have done. I've done in my other musicals, is made these trios and quartets and quintets work, so that it becomes, I mean, that really is going to be the 11th hour number, where this explosion of feeling and ultimately resolution of the problem happens.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It was a blast to write.
It was so great. Emily's writing of that is just fantastic, and really informs me as a composer of what I need to do. And that's what's exciting, is when we inform each other.
Yeah, and that's been
so great.
A joy through this entire year together. And it's just about 1 year, maybe a week more, and that we had that free flow, and we just kept on inspiring each other. And that's been the glory of it, and got us through chemo and COVID and all kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah, it's been, for me, the joy of this period of my life.
I'm trying to find this sheet of paper that had the audience questions on it, because the one that I didn't remember to put into my notes was a question from someone out there who's read the book, who said, this ending is so sad. You know, how are you going to write that ending? And it's, I guess it's a relief for that particular reader to know that you found something.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And I think Kathy also said she was pleased we had. I
told her that.
Kathy, I'm so dying to meet you and talk to you.
Kathy lives.
I'm jealous of my sister here.
But I told Kathy that we were changing the ending and it was going to be happy. And she's, thank God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you can answer this question. I'm going to ask it anyway, because it's sort of my last main question. Because it's so COVID related and, you know, when will theater open and all of that, but what does the timeline look like for your development process? What are the next steps that you know that you have? And is there any way to know when we might expect that you'll have I don't know.
You take that.
You want me to take that? Uh-huh. Well, you know, no one has a crystal ball. I don't think, you know, many theaters are looking to the spring being the earliest that any of them are going to be opening. And I think that's optimistic. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people don't want to be back in a theater without a vaccine or some kind of drug that will alleviate the agony. So the question will be is how we develop along the way and at what speed. You know, Susan is like me. She when she knows what it is and is clear in her mind, she writes quickly. And I find when I know, if I'm clear in my mind, I know I'm writing well when I'm writing quickly. And so I think once she sees what it's going to be, she's going to go for it. So I would say by the end of, but by the time we get to the new year, we're going to be wanting to hear it at the very latest. I think we may get there a little sooner. But then we need to find the producers to help make the next stage of development happen, because then we'll need an infusion of money and a way to go forward. But I think season after next, we'll be ready to go into some kind of full workshop production kind of thing and then take it from there. But you know, you never know. Musicals take a long time to get right and a long time to sometimes, unless you get very lucky, find the backing and the, you know, right now we're all doing it out of love, and it's quite an extraordinary group of people working on spec, which is some of us are not used to, but it's freeing also, because it's a passion project for everyone.
It is a passion, and you know, I said to Emily, things just seem to fall into place. It's like this is in the stars. The universe wants this to happen, so the right people come in, and yeah, it changes form, but it flows so nicely, and. You know, both Susan and I have said, if you're struggling with finding what the song is, it isn't right.
Yeah. So
that's why once we find it, we're able to write quickly, and that's a pleasure to know that, and to know that if you're really struggling on it, something's wrong with it. Start it from another angle.
Yeah. And that will be true of all.
Yes, and the way the three of us are working is going to be, we haven't really settled into a rhythm of working together, which I hope will happen in the next month or so.
Yeah.
And then we'll know how the three of us work. We know that Emily and I work very well together. Susan and I in the past have written some spectacular songs, and I just think it's going to be a great combination.
I do too.
Yeah.
And Susan and I have been wanting to work together forever. Yeah. So, you know, here we all are. It's just, it's really a miracle. And it's also helped me make the transition to leaving, you know, writing McCarter. Now I can be full-time writing, and I have many directing projects coming up as well. So it just feels, it's so freeing. And I don't think I could, I've always written under the gun, you know, on vacations and weekends and in the interstices. And now it will take the time it needs to take.
Right.
And that's a great.
Right. Thank you, COVID.
I just want to note that Sorrel Harif wrote in the chat, we feel your passion and we are grateful.
Oh, thank you.
And you know, I stick to my script, but I didn't script the end of this, Emily, because it's hard to say goodbye to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we don't say goodbye in the theater, you know. And certainly you and I are not saying goodbye.
Right.
We're still living here. You're still living here. I have a feeling you're going to continue this career.
I have my marching orders.
I have to tell the audience this. Yes, that in my mind, Paula Alexson is the Rachel Zhivago of McCarter Theater Center. She's doing it the great contributors in the world, and her passion and intelligence and hard work are just, you know, unbeatable. So
my experience of working there is that the staff is extraordinary. Everybody just put so much into it, and Paula, it was just a joy to have met you last year and to resume our friendship.
I'm a sister too. I'm one of three, so I feel like I'm part of the sisterhood.
Right. Here we are.
I'll also say that Kathy Harif put into the chat, thank you, Lucy and Emily. I'm so excited about this project. And our dear colleague, Cheryl Mintz, has also added Gloria Life on PBS in 28 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you get a twofer with Emily Mann. You have this beautiful interview with Emily and her dear friend and collaborator, Lucy Simon. And at 9 o'clock on your local PBS station on Great Performances, her play Gloria a Life will be shown. Would you like to just say a few quick words about which production was actually filmed and who we should be looking for?
What was filmed was the last few performances with Christine Latte in New York and Diane Paulus's directed production, not the McCarter production that was here that I directed with Mary McDonnell this season. This is last January. Oh, what are we? We're in July.
I know already.
Right?
I feel like
so it's a year ago, January.
January
New
2019.
New York off-Broadway production at the Darrell Roth Theater. Yes, which Lucy saw.
Oh, now is that on tonight? I thought that's
on tonight.
Yes. What?
It's on tonight at 9 o'clock in about 25 minutes.
What? But isn't it on PBS on Sunday?
I think it'll show multiple times, but it's definitely tonight at 9. It's enough time to get a nice glass of wine or a soft bed.
Yes.
So where do you see it?
Kate Schwartz says it feels like a perfect collaboration, you two. Our friend Richard Stucker is in the audience, Emily, just so that you know as well. He does want to know when we'll see some of your wonderful past productions streamed on our website. And I guess.
Yes. I want it.
But you don't need to worry about it anymore. And I'm sad to say that, but also happy that you're free to go on and collaborate and finish this beautiful project so that we can see it with this beautiful woman, Lucy Simon. We can't wait for that. Thank you for this time with both of you. Thank you, audience, for joining us. Though this series ends tonight, this series of live in conversation with Emily, McCarter at Home will continue to reach out to our audience and communities through programming and summer online classes. For now, though, we'll just say, I'm going to let you close it up, Emily, my dear, my friend.
Well, thank you, Paula. Thank you, Lucy. I love you so much. And to all of you, thank you for 30 astonishing years, and thank you for your support of McCarter at Home. I hope you stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, and I hope to see you all live sometime in a theater. And maybe we'll all meet opening night of our Souls at Night.
How about that?
Virtual hugs. Thank you.
Applause to you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We love you. Thank you, team.
Love you.
Everyone have a good night. Go watch Gloria Life. Take care.
Where do we watch it?
PBS, your local PBS station.
Oh, okay, great. All right.
Okay.
You.
Channel 13 for you.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Emily.
Thank
Good
you.
night, folks.
Good night, all.
Good night.